The airport terminal was freezing. Not because of the air conditioning, but because I had been sitting on that cold metal bench for nearly 4 hours, watching families reunite, couples embrace, and children run toward grandparents with open arms. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere important. Everyone except me. I was 17 years old, clutching a one-way ticket to a city I had never visited, surrounded by luggage that held everything I owned in this world. My father had promised he would be there. He had looked me in the eyes just that morning and said, "I'll be right behind you, sweetheart. Just go ahead and check in. I need to make one quick phone call." That phone call lasted 4 hours. And when I finally called him, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial, his phone went straight to voicemail. Not once, not twice. 17 times I called. 17 times I heard that automated voice telling me the person I needed most in the world was unavailable. But here's the thing about being abandoned in an airport when you are barely old enough to drive. You don't cry right away. You don't break down. You go into survival mode. You tell yourself there has been a misunderstanding, that he is stuck in traffic, that his phone died, that any second now he will come running through those sliding doors with an apology and a story about what held him up. You tell yourself anything except the truth, because the truth is too heavy to carry alone. My name is Elena Vasquez, and for most of my childhood, I believed my father hung the moon. He was the kind of dad who showed up to every school play, who coached my soccer team even though he knew nothing about the sport, who woke up at 5 in the morning to make me breakfast before my exams. He was my hero, my protector, the one person I could always count on, until I couldn't. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will hurt you the deepest. And how one phone call, years later, changed everything I thought I knew about family, forgiveness, and the kind of person I wanted to become. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it today. I grew up in a small town called Oakhaven, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and the biggest excitement was when the diner changed its menu. My mother, Sophia, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, pulling double shifts more often than not. She was the backbone of our family, the one who made sure bills were paid and dinners were on the table, even when she was running on 3 hours of sleep. My father, Daniel, was a contractor. He built houses for a living, and he was good at it. People in Oakhaven trusted him because he was honest and hardworking. He would show up on time, finish the job, and never charge more than what he promised. Everyone admired him. Everyone respected him, including me. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. A hardworking mother, a devoted father, and a daughter who was determined to make them proud. I studied hard, stayed out of trouble, and never gave my parents any reason to worry. I thought that was what love looked like. Showing up, being good, making yourself small enough to fit into the life someone else has planned for you. But love is not supposed to feel like shrinking. I remember the exact moment I realized something was wrong. I was 15, sitting at the kitchen table, doing homework while my mother cooked dinner. My father walked in, and he was different. Not in a way I could immediately describe, but in a way I could feel. He had a smile on his face that I had never seen before. A private smile. The kind of smile people wear when they are keeping a secret they are not ready to share. My mother noticed too. I saw her hands pause over the pot she was stirring. She looked at him with an expression I did not understand at the time, but I would recognize years later. It was the look of someone who knows they are losing something and does not know how to stop it. That night, I heard them arguing through the thin walls of our house. My father's voice was low and controlled, like he was explaining something to a child who refused to understand. My mother's voice was higher, cracking with emotion. I could not make out the words, but I could feel the tension, the weight of something unspoken pressing down on all of us. The next morning, my father left for work earlier than usual. He kissed my forehead, said he loved me, and walked out the door like everything was normal. But nothing was normal, and it would never be normal again. For the next 2 years, the cracks in our family grew wider. My father started coming home later. Then he started not coming home at all. My mother stopped asking questions and started drinking wine alone in the living room after I went to bed. I pretended not to notice because pretending was easier than accepting the truth. I convinced myself that all families had rough patches, that people grew apart sometimes but always found their way back to each other, that love was patient and forgiving and would eventually fix everything. I was wrong. The summer I turned 17, my father sat me down in the living room. My mother was at work, which I later realized was deliberate. He wanted to tell me alone. He wanted to tell me without her there to interrupt or cry or make him feel guilty. He said he had met someone else, a woman named Vanessa. He said he had fallen in love, and he was leaving. He said he had already found a new place to live, and he would be moving out at the end of the month. I remember sitting there, completely frozen, while he explained his plan. He had everything figured out. The timeline, the logistics, the practical details of dismantling our family. What he did not have was an explanation for why he was doing this, or an apology, or even a hint of regret. I asked him the only question that mattered. What about Mom? What about me? He looked at me with those eyes I had trusted my whole life, and he said something I will never forget. You are almost an adult, Elena. You will understand someday. He did not hug me. He did not cry. He simply stood up, walked to his bedroom, and started packing boxes like he was going on a business trip instead of ending a marriage. I did not tell my mother what had happened when she came home that night. I could not find the words. I watched her walk through the house, completely unaware that her husband had already checked out emotionally, that he had already left her, even though he was still physically present. The end of that month came faster than I expected. My father loaded his belongings into a rented truck, and I watched him drive away. He did not look back. He did not wave. He just disappeared down the road like he had never been part of our family at all. In the weeks that followed, my mother withdrew into herself. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. She stopped doing anything except going to work and coming home to sit in the dark. I tried to help her, but she pushed me away. She said she needed space. She said she would be fine. She said everything would work out. But nothing worked out. A few months after my father moved out, he called and asked to see me. He said he wanted to explain everything. He wanted to introduce me to Vanessa, who he claimed was wonderful and kind and would love me like her own daughter. I agreed to meet him because I was desperate for his approval. I thought if I could just understand what had happened, if I could just find a way to accept his new life, maybe things would go back to the way they used to be. Maybe I would get my father back. The meeting was a disaster. Vanessa was nice enough, but everything about the situation felt wrong. They were already talking about getting married. They were already making plans for a future that did not include my mother. They were already acting like the past did not matter. I sat there listening to them talk about their dream wedding, their dream house, their dream life together. And I realized something terrible. My father was not just leaving my mother. He was leaving me too. He was building a new family that had no room for the old one. Not really. When I got home that night, I cried for the first time since he left. Not because I missed him, not because I was sad, because I finally understood that I had been replaced, that the man I had loved my whole life had made a choice, and I was not part of it. The airport day started like any other morning. My father picked me up at my mother's house around 8 a.m. He seemed different that day, calmer than usual, more relaxed. He told me we were going to visit Vanessa's family in California. They had invited me to spend a week with them, and he thought it was a great opportunity for me to get to know everyone. I was skeptical, but I agreed. I wanted to make him happy. I wanted to prove that I could be part of his new life, even if it hurt. We drove to the airport in silence. My father kept checking his phone, texting someone, smiling at the screen. I told myself it was work. I told myself it was nothing. But I knew better. I knew he was texting Vanessa. When we arrived at the terminal, my father parked the car and walked me inside. He helped me check my luggage and handed me my boarding pass. He told me to go through security while he parked the car. He said he would meet me at the gate. "I'll be right behind you, sweetheart," he said. "Just go ahead." Those words were the last things he ever said to me. I went through security. I found the gate. I sat down on that cold metal bench and waited, and waited, and waited. The flight to California departed without me. The next flight departed without me. I watched people come and go, each one attached to someone else. Families saying goodbye. Friends reuniting. Lovers embracing. I had no one. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice filled with panic before I even spoke. She told me my father had called her. He said he had changed his mind. He said he did not think it was a good idea for me to meet Vanessa's family after all. He said he had turned around and gone home. He had not told me because he did not want to deal with my reaction. My mother told me to take a cab home. She said she would pay for it. She said she was so sorry. She said she wished she could be there to hold me. But none of that fixed the fact that my father had left me. Not just at the airport, but in every way that mattered. I sat in that terminal for a long time after I got off the phone with my mother. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just sat there, numb, trying to understand how the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had held my hand at my first school dance, who had promised to always protect me, could do something so cruel. Eventually, I stood up. I walked to the baggage claim, retrieved my luggage, and called a cab. I gave the driver my mother's address and stared out the window the entire ride home. When I walked through the front door, my mother was waiting. She pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than any hug she had ever given me. She did not say anything. She just held me while I finally let myself break. That night, I made a decision. I would never let my father hurt me again. I would never give him that power. I would build a life that did not depend on his approval or his love or his presence. I would become someone so strong that his absence would not even matter. It was a noble goal.
But it was also a lie.
Because the truth is, abandonment does not just go away. It lives inside you. It shapes the way you love, the way you trust, the way you see yourself. It took me years to understand that. After the airport incident, I cut my father out of my life completely. I stopped answering his calls. I stopped reading his texts. I stopped pretending that we were still a family. I focused on my studies, got a job at a local bookstore, and started saving money to move out of my mother's house. My mother tried to convince me to forgive him. She said he was just confused. She said he still loved me. She said he had made a mistake, but by the time I turned 25, I had built a life I could be proud of. I had graduated from college with honors. I had a stable job as a marketing coordinator. I had friends who loved me and an apartment that felt like home. I had even started dating someone named Marcus, who was patient and kind and never made me feel like I had to earn his affection. But I still carried the weight of what my father had done. I had not talked to him in 8 years. I had not seen him since that day at the airport. I had no idea what he was doing or where he was living or whether he even thought about me. Part of me did not care. Part of me wanted to believe I was completely over it, but I was not. It was a rainy Tuesday when I got the phone call. I was at work, reviewing a marketing campaign, when my phone buzzed on my desk. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me to answer. "Hello," I said. "Is this Elena Vasquez?" a woman's voice asked. She sounded professional, but there was a hint of hesitation in her voice, like she was delivering news she did not want to share. "Yes, this is Elena." "Who is this?" "My name is Dr. Chen. I am calling from Mercy Hospital. Your father, Daniel Vasquez, has been admitted to our care. He requested that we contact you." I felt my stomach drop. I had not heard anyone call him my father in years. The words sounded foreign, like a title that no longer belonged to anyone. "What happened?" I asked. My voice was steady, even though my hands were shaking. "Your father suffered a major heart attack. He is stable at the moment, but his condition is serious. He asked to see you. He told me to tell you he is sorry for everything, and he hopes you will come." I did not know what to say. A part of me wanted to hang up, to pretend I had never received this call, to go back to my carefully constructed life, where my father did not exist. But another part of me, a part one had tried to bury, was screaming at me to go. "Dr. Chen, can you tell me if anyone else is there? Is Vanessa with him?" There was a pause. "I am sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your father and Vanessa separated several years ago. He has been living alone since then. He does not have anyone else." I sat in silence for a long moment. My father had left his family for Vanessa. He had chosen her over my mother and me. And now she was gone too. He was alone, just like he had left me alone in that airport terminal. I will come, I said. But I am not doing this for him. I am doing this for me. Dr. Chen gave me the hospital address and room number. She told me visiting hours were almost over, but she would make an exception for me. She said I could come tonight. I hung up the phone and sat there, staring at my computer screen without seeing anything. 8 years of silence was about to end. 8 years of anger and hurt and unanswered questions was about to come crashing down. I did not know what I would find at that hospital. I did not know if my father would be the same man who had abandoned me, or if time had changed him. But I knew one thing for certain. I was not the same girl he had left behind. The drive to the hospital felt surreal. Rain was pounding against my windshield, and the streets were slick with water. I focused on the road, on the red taillights ahead of me, on anything except the knot of emotion forming in my chest. When I finally arrived, I sat in my car for a long time before getting out. I stared at the hospital entrance and tried to prepare myself for what was coming. I told myself I would stay calm. I told myself I would not cry. I told myself I would listen to what my father had to say and then leave without giving him the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. But when I walked into that hospital room, all my carefully constructed walls came crashing down. My father looked old. Not just older, but diminished. His skin was pale, his cheeks were sunken, and his hair had turned completely gray. He was connected to machines that beeped and hummed, monitoring his failing heart. He was not the strong, confident man I remembered. He was a broken shell of a person, lying in a hospital bed, waiting for someone who had every reason to hate him. "Elena," he whispered when he saw me. "You came." I stood in the doorway, unable to move. My mind was filled with everything I wanted to say, everything I had stored up over 8 years of silence. Accusations, anger,
Pain.
Instead, I walked to the chair beside his bed and sat down. "Dr. Chen said you wanted to see me," I said. My voice was flat, emotionless.
"I did," he said.
"I have wanted to see you for a long time, but I did not think you would want to see me. And I did not know how to find the words to ask for forgiveness. So you just gave up?" He closed his eyes for a moment.
"Yes."
"I gave up. That is what I do. That is what I have always done. I gave up on your mother. I gave up on you. I gave up on Vanessa when things got hard. I have spent my whole life running away from the consequences of my choices." I did not respond. I just sat there listening to the beep of the heart monitor. "I know you have no reason to care about what happens to me," he continued. "I know I do not deserve your sympathy. But there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." I waited. He took a shaky breath. "Leaving you at the airport was not just an accident. It was not just me being careless or thoughtless. It was deliberate. Vanessa told me she did not want you to come on that trip. She said you would ruin everything. She said if I really loved her, I would leave you behind." I felt my heart stop. "So I did," he continued. "I left you there because I was a coward. Because I was so afraid of being alone that I was willing to sacrifice my own daughter." The words hung in the air between us. I should have been angry. I should have screamed at him. I should have walked out of that room and never looked back. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Compassion. Not for him. Not for the man who had abandoned me. But for the broken person he had become. The person who had made terrible choices and had to live with the consequences. The person who had spent years running from himself, only to end up alone in a hospital bed, begging for forgiveness from someone he had wronged. "Dad," I said. It was the first time I had called him that in 8 years. "I am not going to pretend that what you did not happen. It happened, and it hurt me more than you will ever know. But I am not the same person I was back then. I have spent years working through what you did. I have built a life for myself that does not depend on your approval or your love." He started crying, silent tears streaming down his face. "I am not here to forgive you," I continued. "Not yet. I do not know if I ever will. But I am here to listen. I am here to give you the chance to say what you need to say. And then, when you are done, I am going to leave. And I'm going to continue living my life." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "That is more than I deserve. The thing is," I said, "I am not doing this for you. I am doing this for me. I am tired of carrying around all this anger. I am tired of letting what you did define who I am. I am ready to let go, even if it is just a little bit at a time." For the next hour, my father told me everything. He told me about his childhood, about his own father who had abandoned him when he was young. He told me about Vanessa, about how she had manipulated him and made him feel like he had to choose between his new family and his old one. He told me about all the mistakes he had made and all the regret he had carried for years. He did not try to make excuses. He did not blame anyone else. He just told the truth for the first time in his life. And when he was done, I stood up to leave. "Elena," he said, "I know I have no right to ask this, but will you come back? Will you visit me again?" I looked at him, this man who had once been my hero, now reduced to a fragile shadow of himself. I thought about all the years of silence, all the years of pain, all the years of pretending I did not care. "Yes," I said, "I will come back." I did not know if I would ever forgive him. I did not know if we would ever have the relationship we had once shared. But I knew that holding on to anger would not help me heal. And I knew that giving him a second chance was not about him. It was about me. It was about finally letting go of the weight I had carried for far too long. The weeks that followed were strange. I visited my father at the hospital whenever I could. Sometimes he was coherent. Sometimes he was not. But every time I walked through that door, his face lit up. Every time I left, he thanked me for coming. I started to see the man he had been before everything fell apart. The man who had coached my soccer team. The man who had woken up early to make me breakfast. The man who had told me he was proud of me. He was still there, buried underneath all the mistakes and regret. And slowly, painfully, I started to forgive him. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Marcus supported me throughout this entire process. He never pushed me to forgive my father, but he never made me feel guilty for wanting to try. He just held my hand and listened and reminded me that whatever I decided, it was okay. "You're doing something incredibly brave," he told me one night. "Most people would not even try. Most people would walk away and never look back." "Maybe that would be easier," I said. "But you are not the kind of person who takes the easy way out, are you?"
He was right.
I was not. My father's health declined over the next few months. The doctors told me his heart was too damaged to recover. They said he did not have much time left. I stayed with him through the end. I was there when he took his last breath, holding his hand, telling him I loved him. It was not a perfect ending. There were still so many things left unsaid. So many questions I would never get answers to. So much pain that would never fully heal. But I had done something I never thought I was capable of. I had forgiven him, not because he had earned it, not because he had asked for it, but because I had finally realized that holding on to resentment was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. My father's funeral was small. My mother came, even though she had every right to stay away. She stood beside me, holding my hand, and we said goodbye to the man who had broken both of our hearts. He was not a bad person, my mother said after the service.
He was just lost.
And sometimes, lost people hurt the ones they love most. He did not have to hurt us, I said. He could have chosen differently. Maybe, she said. But would you be the person you are today if he had? I thought about that question for a long time. Would I have become the strong, independent woman I was if my... It has been 3 years since my father passed away. I am 30 years old now, engaged to Marcus, and living a life I never thought I would have. We have a small house with a backyard where our dog, Charlie, loves to run. I am still working in marketing, but I recently started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring teenagers who have been abandoned by their parents. Because I know what it feels like to be left behind. And I want to help them understand that their worth does not depend on the people who walk away. Marcus and I are planning our wedding. It will be small, just close friends and family. My mother is helping me plan it, and she is happier than I have ever seen her. She has even started dating someone new, a kind man named Robert who treats her with the respect she deserves. Life is not perfect. There are still days when I think about my father and feel a twinge of sadness. There are still moments when I wish things had been different, but I do not let those feelings consume me anymore. I have learned that forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a process. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to let go of the past. And even though I will never fully understand why my father did what he did, I have made peace with it. Because at the end of the day, holding on to anger only hurts the person holding it. And I refuse to let my father's choices define the rest of my life. The airport was the beginning of my story, not the end. It was the moment I realized that I was capable of surviving on my own. It was the moment I started building the life I have today. And for that, I am grateful. If you take anything away from my story, I hope it is this. The people who abandon you do not determine your value. They do not define who you are or who you can become. You define that. You decide what kind of person you want to be, regardless of what other people do. Forgiveness is not about excusing someone's behavior. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. It is about recognizing that you deserve peace, even if the person who hurt you never gives you an apology. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply living well. Building a life that is so full and so beautiful that the person who walked away becomes irrelevant. Not because you are bitter, but because you have moved on. I have moved on. I have healed. I have forgiven. And I have built a life that I am proud of, not despite what my father did, but because of it. He left me at the airport. But I did not stay there. I got up, I walked out, and I created a future for myself. And so can you. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it today. Sometimes the most healing thing we can do is realize we are not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, no matter what you have been through, you are worthy of love. You are worthy of happiness. You are worthy of a life that is entirely your own. Take care of yourself and never stop choosing yourself.